Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. Always be ready, that's the Boy Scouts motto. They also follow a strict set of rules: be honest, loyal, helpful, friendly, polite, kind, obedient, cheerful, careful with money, brave, clean, and respectful. But sometimes, being all of those things makes you too trusting. That's exactly how John felt when he saw an email on his wife's phone. Normally, he wouldn't snoop, she knew that, which is probably why she didn't bother hiding anything. John had always lived by the Boy Scout rules, never breaking anyone's trust. But when his wife mentioned her upcoming trip, he had forgotten the hotel name and wanted to avoid an argument about why he wasn't listening. Those arguments were a bit more frequent lately. The trip was going to be their longest time apart after getting married 5 years before, and John had been thinking of doing something romantic, like sending flowers. After all, what better way to show the woman he loved how much he loved her than to send her flowers while she was several thousand miles away without him in the city of love? Paris? It was the city of love, all right, but he was not the one who she was going to be loving. No, that was going to be Alex, who was going on the trip too. After entering the passcode to his wife's phone, the date of their wedding, John found himself reading one of the not-safe-for-work emails his wife and Alex had been trading over the past month. They were talking about strolling down the Rue de Rivoli at night and then taking a boat ride on the Seine under the moonlight. Almost as surprising as the affair itself was the fact that Ben's wife, Sarah, and her lover, Alex, were exchanging their messages using their work email accounts. She should have known better. So should Alex. Like John, Sarah was a lawyer. Alex was a paralegal at Emma's firm. All three had done enough document review and big litigation disputes where huge teams of lawyers and paralegals read each and every one of hundreds of thousands of email messages produced or being considered for production as part of document discovery. There was always a story about an idiot or two having an affair, with the lawyers then trying to figure out if the affair had anything to do with the case, and if so, how to limit the damage. The truth is that the reason John had not been paying attention when Sarah told him about the trip and the name of the hotel the team would be using was because something funny was going on. John did not know what at the time, but his instinct had the hairs standing up on the back of his neck. 7 years as an attorney listening to clients lie and listening to lawyers scrupulously avoiding lying by not telling the whole truth had made his listening skills acute. And something was off when Sarah had originally told him about the trip. A very boring arbitration matter that was going to have them so busy they were not even going to be able to enjoy the sights, she said. She said it while not looking at him at all, and too flippantly. She knew Paris was one of Ben's favorite cities and one they had always talked about going together because Sarah had never been there. So John had thought her response odd but had never even imagined this worst-case scenario. The email string he was looking at now, though, was a stiletto thrust straight to the heart. "Why don't you just lose the Boy Scout so we can spend more time together without worrying?" Alex had written last night. "He makes me feel safe," Sarah replied. "So why are you screwing me behind his back every chance you get? You make me excited," smiley face emoji. John had no idea what he was going to do at the moment other than print the email exchange on the Wi-Fi printer they had in the basement just in case. Dependably, as an experienced litigator, his first instinct was to preserve the evidence. After printing the email and putting it in his computer bag, John thought he certainly knew what he wanted to do. As he saw it, he had two options. One was to punch his wife in the face until he smashed her nose completely. The other was to grab her behind the head while pretending to get ready to kiss her, but then to smash her face into one of the trees in the woods behind the house, and then when she recovered from the shock enough to start screaming and spitting out blood and a couple of teeth, smashing her head into the tree again. Alex, on the other hand, would experience less mercy. Before hurting anyone, he needed to think. The thinking was what made him a lawyer. He got paid to use his brain, not his muscles, and he had to do the thinking quickly because Sarah was out for a run and would be back soon. But before he even did the thinking, he had to finish the mission and find the hotel. It would not be for sending flowers, though. He did not know what he would need the information for, but he just knew he needed it. Perhaps as a target. Hotel La Stella, near the Place de la Lexington, about a 5-minute walk from the International Chamber of Commerce where Sarah and Alex would be working on their arbitration matter with the rest of the team, at least when the two lovers had some free time between lovemaking. Hotel located, he had to do a quick computer search on Massachusetts divorce law. He remembered some from the bar exam 5 years back. But it was always good to check. Adultery was a ground of divorce and could affect issues like alimony and the split of property, but there were defenses to a claim of adultery too. One was condonation. Finding out about the adultery and then voluntarily resuming sexual relations and continuing to live together was a defense. So he had to get out of the house and fast, and there would be no confrontation. Not yet. He fully intended to hit her with full shock and awe without there being any unknown unknowns thrown into the mix. He was going to dominate the battle space of the end of this marriage, which meant he would have to lie. Not compatible with the Scout law, but this was war. It was Patton, after all, who said, in wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Ben's lies now would serve a higher purpose. None of them were under oath anyway. He went up to the master bedroom and began packing. He finished quickly and placed the suitcases by the front door. He was nearly through assembling the critical documents he wanted: bank and credit card statements, 401k and IRA statements, car titles, pay statements, mortgage, and Emma's latest student loan balance sheet when she got back from her run. He heard her in the kitchen when he came up from his basement office. He decided to look harried and out of sorts. When he saw her drinking a Powerade, her shoulder-length blonde hair was in a ponytail. She looked good. Shame she was a cheat. He knew then that the love was dead. Guess what? I'm going to Paris, he said with a grim smile. The color drained from Emma's face. Her green eyes paled. What? Paris? Massachusetts? She quickly lost her shocked expression. James just called. John continued. We're doing depositions in my insurance case and we have to prep the witness. Apparently, we just lost a motion to compel. The judge is pissed, and the whole discovery schedule is in chaos. I'm going to be on the road for weeks, although I will probably have time to stop by now and again to do some laundry. Poor baby, Sarah said with an appropriate look of concern. Maybe your firm is hiring. I'd much rather go to your Paris, John said and watched the concern creep back to her face. But then she smirked. Send me a resume. Maybe you have the right pedigree for us to consider you. That was a dig. Emma's law school was higher ranked in the academic standings than Ben's was. Then maybe, with some feeling of guilt, she moved like she was going in for a hug. But John turned around and went back down to his office before she could close the gap. The visions of punching her in the face were returning, and he was not sure he could keep them under control. Coming back up, Sarah asked what he wanted for dinner. Can't stay. I'll grab something on the road. James is losing his mind and wanted me on the road immediately. He was talking as he bustled through the kitchen. Sarah followed him to the door, looking a little concerned as he grabbed his suitcases and headed out the door. She puckered her lips for a goodbye kiss. So sorry. I think I may be coming down with a cold. My throat has been feeling sore this afternoon. Maybe it's allergies, but I don't want you to catch anything. Sarah followed him out to the car as he loaded it. When will you be back? Probably not until Tuesday. We're going down to Salem after Paris. Then the next week we have to go to Hartford. Perhaps he was getting even more paranoid, but he thought he heard the gears of her brain turning as he watched her eyes look away, as though calculating how his absence was going to present some unexpected opportunities. He backed out of the driveway after waving goodbye. Hopefully, she would just assume that he was preoccupied with work and annoyed that he had been called in on a Thursday. His acting skills could not handle more at the moment, but he suspected she was already planning on inviting Alex over. John drove until he came to a nearby strip mall with a coffee shop. Like most lawyers, he thought better on paper. As he drank his coffee, he began making a list of things to do. He paused for a moment to realize that he had not once thought of reconciling. That was not even an option. There would be retribution. The only question was that of degree. The ringtone of his phone interrupted him. He did not recognize the number. Yes, he answered impatiently. Mr. Hayes, I am Tom Wilkes. I don't think we have met, but I'll come straight to the point. I got your number from some old property records. I'm in the business of buying old houses and tearing them down to build mansions. I know, everyone hates what I do, but they don't hate me so much when I give them the check. Granger spoke so quickly that John did not have time to react except to think that the house was not old. It was cozy, and where the hell did he get off talking about tearing it down? But then his rational mind took over. Well, I'd like to buy your house to tear it down. I'd offer to build a McMansion for you, but I can never guarantee the timing of the new construction, especially with county permits and all that. I make all my profit on flipping them fast, but I think I can give you a very good price if you and your wife are motivated to sell. John had trouble stopping a Grinch-like smile from spreading on his face. Sarah had picked the house just before they got married. It was an older ranch, but it had a nice yard that backed right up on a section of woods with a stream running through it. It was close to major highways but secluded enough that it was peaceful. What absolutely sold her was the treehouse in the yard opposite the window to the master bedroom. She loved how it was a house ready for children. John had just liked the price and that it was only about a 20-minute ride from a major parking lot for the metro system. That and the 30-minute train ride to work made a pretty good commute for the area. Mr. Granger, I'm going to be in and out with work over the next few days, so I can't guarantee access to the property. Call me Tom. I don't need to see it inside. Like I said, it's a teardown and I've already checked it out on the outside. Can you meet Sunday morning? Tom, sure. By the way, I'll probably be doing the closing myself with a power of attorney for my wife. She's very preoccupied with work-related stuff these days. No problem. I'll give you the form we use. John noted the address and began to see the contours of a plan. Felt safe with her Boy Scout, did she? That's because Sarah had no knowledge that good old Lord Baden-Powell was using military scouting as the model for what would become his boys' movement. Skills like stealth, cunning, and self-reliance. Ambushes, in other words. She would never see what was coming until it was too late. But first, recon. For that, he tossed his empty coffee cup and went out to the car for some privacy. He pulled up a number on his phone and dialed. Ethan, he asked when the call was answered. I need a favor, and I need it now. Ethan Barry was a private investigator. John had made it a point during his 5 years doing legal work for corporations also to do pro bono work to help poor people with their legal issues. It appealed to his notions of public service, and besides, he got billable hour credit for it from his firm and actual experience in court, which his day job normally did not provide. One of his law school classmates had recommended Ethan to help with a nasty divorce case involving a stepfather abusing his stepdaughter. Frank's evidence put the guy away when the sluggish police response would not, and that evidence resulted in the divorce getting processed quickly. Ethan listened as John explained what he had learned. And you think your wife is going to have him in your bed tonight? Is she that brazen? Arrogant? She was one of the top students in her law school class. Thinks she can't make a mistake. I'll do this one myself. I owe you that Rivera divorce case got me all kinds of good publicity. The phone has been ringing off the hook. I appreciate that, Ethan, John said. By the way, there's this treehouse in the backyard. You might want to use it. Looks right into the master bedroom, and she likes to do the marital business with the shades open. Used to freak me out, but whatever got her motor running, you know. You can get there by crossing through the woods and jumping over the stream after dark. No fences and no dogs around. There's a service road on the other side where you can park. Thanks. If you don't mind, I'm gonna hide a camera outside pointing at the front of the house to keep track of who is coming and going and when. I am fine. And you're using David for the divorce, right? I'm assuming that you want a divorce. Yes and yes. Okay. I know how he likes the affidavit and report done. If you're right, we'll know pretty soon. John then called David. Is this about the law school reunion, John? I've already had 5 calls about contributing to their capital fund. No, I want to hire you. Sarah is cheating and I want to burn the relationship. After John brought him up to date, David said, come tomorrow. I know it's Sunday, but I had to deal with some paperwork in the office anyway. So I was going in. We might as well get started on this. Sounds like you've covered the bit about not condoning the cheating. David is covering the clear and convincing evidence part. The sticky part will just be the fighting over the financial settlement. She's a big firm lawyer too, so she'll have the resources to fight and drag it out, plus folks at her firm giving her advice. Leave that to me, said John. I think we can settle this like civilized people. Then that means you are not going to burn the bridge, but okay. We can see what you come up with. His last call was more delicate. Hello, Lila. It's John. The silence on the end of the line was deafening. Lila? You son of a niece to talk to you too, honey. After all this time, what do you want, John? After all this time, I need your help. I thought Sarah was your helpmate. It's about Sarah. She's cheating. What a surprise. Can't help you emotionally or sexually these days. I am dating, and I'm sure he's a lucky guy. Look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we fooled around and let it ruin the friendship. I'm also sorry that I let Sarah kick you out of my life when I thought there was a chance that we could get back to being friends. But as a friend, I need your help now. A holy, Lila let her stew. What do you need, John? He told her. There was silence on the line, then laughter. I'm in, she said after she calmed down, but he could still hear the smile in her voice. You always did make me laugh. Thanks, Lila. When the dust settles, you'll have to introduce me to Mr. Lucky, so I can congratulate him on his fine taste and take you both out to dinner. It's a date, she said. He needed somewhere to hide out for a while and to plan, so he found a long-term stay hotel out past the Beltway in Lexington, far enough from his and Emma's usual haunts that he was not at risk of being seen. Got settled, and then went for something to eat. He was not really hungry but knew that he needed something in his stomach to absorb the alcohol he planned on drinking. A restaurant called El Charro was across the street from the hotel. That would do the trick because refried beans and cheese would be easy to vomit later. As the hostess seated him in a booth, he saw the bartender looking at him. He seemed vaguely familiar, but John put it out of his head. He had enough to worry about at the moment. Seeing pupusas on the menu meant that the restaurant was a Central American place pretending to be Mexican. Most Americans didn't know the difference. He ordered some cheap tequila with the food. He knew the hangover would be brutal the next day but considered the pain part of the rite of passage. The waitress returned with a bottle of excellent top-shelf tequila and a highball glass. When John looked up at the waitress, she just pointed to the bartender, who saluted him. John acknowledged the salute and poured himself a generous drink. When the bartender went back to serving other customers, it took a moment, but John remembered who he was. He recalled the bartender as one of the members of the public who sat through the Rivera divorce hearings, as well as the criminal proceedings that John had attended. He was always in the last row by himself. No one ever sat next to him. His client Sonia's daughter hugged him once, but when John asked Isabel who it was, she got very quiet and said he was just a friend of the family. John ate in silence, making notes on a legal pad and drinking more tequila. When the waitress cleared his dirty plates, he went to the restroom. He was conscious that things seemed to be moving around like he was on a ship when he walked. He needed to steady himself against the wall while he did his business. He then returned to the booth, taking extra care to be steady, and found the bartender sitting in his booth on the opposite bench. "Senor John, nice to see you," he said, reaching out to take Ben's hand and shake it vigorously. John sat down and waited. "I never thanked you for helping my cousin out with that scumsucker she was married to." John tried to protest that it was nothing and just doing what little he could, but the bartender ignored him. "He got badly beaten up in prison. Did you know that? Really badly. They don't think he'll walk again or eat solid food." The bartender had a slight smile as he told John. John felt a chill as he looked at the bartender. "I hadn't heard that." "John," the bartender chuckled. "That's yesterday's news. What brings you alone to El Charro on a Thursday night? Where is your lovely wife?" John looked the bartender straight in the eyes. The bartender was still smiling. It was not a mocking smile, more like a smile that knew a lot. John could not understand why he would ask such a strange question. How did the bartender even know that John was married? Then John remembered that Sarah had surprised him by showing up at one of the hearings and had kissed him after it was over. The bartender must still have been in the courtroom. "She and I are having some problems," John said. He saw no reason to lie or to hide the information. "Like she's screwing someone else?" Again with the knowing smile, John was shocked into silence. "I'm not an attorney, Don John, but I do know that if you want to keep a secret, you should not write it down and leave the paper in the open," the bartender said, gesturing to Ben's notepad. It noted the elements of cheating, had doodles showing Alex getting stabbed, contained the name Sarah rounded by a circle with a slash through it, and had a to-do list that included the phrase "burn the relationship." John shrugged. Bad operational security, but at least he was not betraying any client confidences. Any man in your situation has to ask himself what he wants. What is it that you really want, Senor John? What do you most want in the world, not counting the money? If you could choose your revenge? John did not hesitate. "I want to punch her in the nose so hard that it breaks, and I want to punch her in the face so hard that I blacken both her eyes. She has a very pretty face and very expressive eyes. I want to destroy that." The bartender's smile broadened. Then he chuckled while shaking his head. "You, my friend, are not thinking rationally. People who take violent revenge like that go to prison. You don't want to go to prison, not unless it is to visit your clients and then leave, right?" The bartender paused and looked at John with sympathy. John nodded. "But perhaps I can be of some assistance. You helped my cousin with her little problem. She could have asked me for help, but for various reasons, she refused to do so. You, however, stepped in and took care of her." John tried to interrupt. Sure, he got Ethan to collect the evidence, but he made the police do all the work. It did not hurt when John got one of the partners from his firm, a former assistant United States attorney from the area, to have a quiet chat with the Commonwealth's attorney to make sure that the criminal case got the proper handling. John only showed up with his client to make sure she got the proper respect from the prosecutors. His client's divorce itself was routine after her husband got convicted in the criminal case. The bartender waved his protests off. You have to understand that helping forgotten people like my cousin is worthy of note just by itself. I am in your debt on behalf of my family. I repay my debts. I think you could use some help. John gazed at him. I'm afraid I don't remember your name. The bartender's smile became a shark-like grin. Some call me the Phantom, the Devil. The bartender nodded. Just the people who do not like me. To my friends, I am Carlos Vega. Now it was Ben's turn to smile. What do I have to do to get a favor from the devil? Sell my soul? His smile disappeared. Ben's did too. Be serious. You're a lawyer. You have no soul. His smile came back, and John realized he was joking. Call it professional courtesy, Senor John. Now just give me your address, the name of your wife, and tell me what her daily routine is. What are you going to do? I have some ideas, but what is that phrase? Ignorance is bliss. I think you need to be blissfully ignorant and be able to account for your movements for the next several months. Get yourself a burner phone so we can keep in touch and leave the number here at the bar, and then don't come back here again. It's better that way. John told the Phantom about hiring the private investigator, about his plans to be out of the house until Sarah left for Spain, and about Emma's travel plans. The Phantom knew the hotel in Paris but did not say how. Just one question, Senor John. Is there any chance of reconciliation, forgiveness, mercy? I don't want to be hearing about second thoughts later. The Phantom was looking him directly in the eyes, the smile gone, his expression serious. John returned his gaze. John took a deep breath and paused to double-check his emotions. The path was clear. He was a simple guy. Trust and loyalty, those were his most important values. They were gone from his marriage. Sarah had flipped a switch in his brain, and the love was now replaced with hate. In time, with mature reflection, he just would not care. That time was not now. None. He relaxed. Good. Don't worry about a thing. The waitress came with the bill. The Phantom shooed her away but allowed John to tip her generously. He also let John take the tequila bottle but warned him to slow down. He needed his wits for battle. Somehow, John woke up Sunday morning at a reasonable hour without much of a hangover. He made it to Harry's law office at 10 a.m. He found Ethan there already. Sorry, Nick said. Definitely screwing the guy in your bed. He was there 2 hours after you called me and was still there when I left this morning. We got very good quality video. I made you a copy, but you might not want to look at it. David interrupted. You're better off not looking. I don't want you doing anything stupid and getting arrested. Don't worry, John said as he took the DVD from Ethan. Give me the summary. I got up in that treehouse just like you said, and they were all over each other. Got really clear shots of their faces and, frankly, the rest of their bodies clearly having sex. For what it's worth, I think it's just a physical thing. They didn't do much talking. They just sexed like bunnies. I don't know if that changes your plans. No, it doesn't. What did they do? They have done everything in all different positions. They both had a lot of stamina. Thanks. That makes me feel worse. So sorry. Anyway, I know Sarah personally from that party you had last year, so I can identify her. We ran the guy's license plates. Alex Martin. We know he works with her. We don't know how long it's been going on, but it seems to be clear and convincing evidence to me. Oh, and we've got a camera on the front of the house covering the driveway and garage so we can tell when they're coming and going. He'll email you the remote link to the live stream on our secure server. I talked to David, and I am going to write a report and supporting affidavit so he can file it. Sorry again, man. Ethan shook hands with both David and John and left the office. So, what do you want to do? David asked. File for divorce on the basis of adultery, but don't serve her. David looked at John without expression. Trust me, David. When I hear those words, I start to get an upset stomach. I don't want you doing anything stupid here. I anticipate that everything is going to go more smoothly than you imagine. David grimaced. Look, David, just file it on Tuesday afternoon, right before the clerk's office closes. Let me know the docket number. They'll take care of the rest. Just remember, John, I don't do criminal law. Not well anyway. If you need to get out of some jam, I'm not going to be able to help. You're going to be pleasantly surprised, John said as he walked out the door. Ben's next stop was a meeting with Tom Wilkes. It was a very productive meeting at which John learned that they could sell the house for more than $210,000 more than the mortgage, all without real estate agent commissions. Sarah would be thrilled if she knew. John promised to get back with the proper paperwork as soon as possible to close the deal. On the way out of Sam's office, John looked at his phone. No messages or calls. She must still be screwing Alex. John took the opportunity to call his boss, James, and tell him that he needed 3 weeks off immediately or else he was quitting. James immediately panicked because John was the only one who knew what was going on with the case and agreed. Fortunately, they were in a slow period in Sven's case, so he could give John some slack. With the groundwork laid, John returned to his hotel to get his real work done. By Tuesday evening, he was ready. Sarah had left voicemail Sunday night and Tuesday night that he had not answered. He was saving all his energy for Tuesday morning. Thanks to Frank's camera in front of the house, John knew that Alex had spent Tuesday night there and, based on Ethan's stay from Sunday night to Tuesday morning, that he would probably leave around 8 a.m. Sarah then would leave around 8:30 a.m. So, at 7 a.m., John came through the front door, calling out, "Honey, I'm home." He heard footsteps upstairs, and then Sarah came down the stairs in her robe, looking disheveled and shocked. "Honey, what a surprise," she said, trying to sound cheerful but barely keeping it together and just as clearly on the verge of complete panic. "I thought you were out until Tuesday. You didn't answer my calls." "I am sorry," John replied cheerfully. "You know how it gets on the road." John pretended not to notice the wine glasses in the living room and went straight to the dining room. Sarah stood in the doorway, looking at John, trying to figure out her next move and how to keep him from going up the stairs to where Alex was obviously hiding. A knock at the door startled her. "Can you get that, honey?" John asked. In the meantime, he had started putting papers on the dining room table and pretended not to notice how Sarah squared her shoulders and went to answer the door, perhaps expecting a process server with divorce papers. Instead, it was Lila who just came in as Sarah opened the door, saying simply, "Hello." "Hello." Sarah followed curiously as Lila sat down at the dining room table and opened a case. "Sorry, hon," John said, "but I don't know when I'm coming up for air again, and you know I can't think of you going on an overseas trip without updating powers of attorney. You know, just in case something goes wrong and we need to deal with some financial or medical emergencies. Oh, and I had a couple of moments over the weekend and got a lead on refinancing the mortgage to a really great rate. Since we are both going to be traveling, I thought this was the only time we might be able to get this done. Sorry for the short notice." He tried to look apologetic. "Who's this?" Sarah asked, pointing to Lila as the artery in her temple stopped throbbing so much. "I am Lila. Lila is a notary," John explained. Sarah visibly relaxed. She still had a lover hidden upstairs, but events were not entirely spiraling out of control yet. "That's my Boy Scout, always prepared," she said with a grin as she sat down, although her eyes were still alert. "That's just who I am, hon." He handed Sarah a pen and started pushing papers in front of her. "The arrow flags tell you where to sign. Take your time to read them if you like. I trust you," Sarah said with a big smile as she rapidly signed all the papers in front of her. He hoped to God she did because he was screwed otherwise. But he who dares wins, as the saying goes. As Sarah signed each document, John arranged them and passed them to Lila, who lined them up and notarized them. "Mrs. Jeffers, do you have a form of photo identification?" Lila asked. Sarah got up from the table to go find her purse. Lila and John traded a glance, but both had to look down at the table quickly to keep from laughing. Sarah brought her driver's license to the table. Lila took a picture of it with her phone and noted the details in her notarial log. Sarah offered coffee, but both John and Lila declined as Lila finished noting in her ledger the documents that she notarized, while John rearranged everything into various folders. Emma's eyes kept looking upstairs, waiting for John to try to go there, calculating her next move. Lila left after putting all her tools away, giving John a smile when Sarah was not looking. John then gave Sarah a break by saying that he had to do a teleconference and would go down to his basement office to do it. Emma's shoulders relaxed because she would now have time to get Alex out the door and clean up the evidence of his presence before John reemerged from his man cave. John went down to give her the illusion that she was still fooling him. He pretended not to hear the heavy clumps down the steps as Alex escaped or the sound of the garage door opening so that Ethan's car could pull out. But when he heard the sound of the master bath shower running, John collected everything, walked out the cellar door, and left in his car without a word to his loving wife. 2 hours later, After a hearty diner breakfast, John was in Harry's office. David looked shell-shocked. So you're telling me you got your wife to sign a CC 1406 form accepting service of the divorce complaint and waiving all future service of process and notice for any future proceedings? Yes, the properly notarized form is right there. And it was? You're also telling me that you got your wife, a seasoned litigator, to sign a property settlement agreement in which she gives you all the proceeds from any sale of your house and the effects therein, the cars, and any jewelry she owns, leaves you with complete discretion for the disposal of her personal effects, and lets both of you walk away with the retirement accounts that each of you possess without any alimony payments from you to her? She makes more than I do anyway. According to these papers, she has expressed her willingness to walk away from the marriage with just about $170,000 in retirement contributions, plus around $260,000 in undergraduate and law school debt? Correct. She has always had a very generous nature. David narrowed his eyes at John and turned back to the papers on his desk. And you also got her to sign an affidavit in which she admits to the adultery, and even admits that her lover was upstairs in the marital bedroom at the time of the signing of the affidavit and had been there all night after making love with her the previous evening? You're even telling me that her affidavit authenticates as true and accurate this email string in which she talks about staying with her lover because he makes her excited? That's what you were telling me, counselor. John said with his face as empty of emotion as he could manage. The documents speak for themselves. David looked at the documents, looked up at John, started to smile, stifled it, and then spun in his chair. Screw it. They'll file all this. You're a respected member of the bar and a friend from law school. How was I to know you made all this up? It looked good to me, Your Honor. I am deeply embarrassed. I was totally taken in by my client's breach of my trust. If anyone should be disbarred, it's Benjamin Jeffers, J.D. Esquire, Your Honor. See where I'm going with this, John? Yep. If required, this notary will testify that Sarah signed all this. Yes, she will. Will she testify that Sarah reviewed the documents carefully? I would not want to try to anticipate or influence anyone's testimony, but as you say, Sarah is an experienced lawyer with a specialty in litigation, so I'm sure she gave the documents the attention that she thought they deserved. I am certain that the notary will say she observed Sarah Jeffers look at the documents and sign each one. I cannot otherwise render an opinion about her state of mind as to an understanding of the contents of each document. "'Kay then," said David. "They'll file all this today, plus Frank's affidavit and report, which includes pictures and the DVD. They'll see if I can't keep it off the electronic docket for a while. We don't want this popping up in the news yet, do we?" "No," John said. "Sarah is going on her trip to Paris in a bit over 3 weeks. The longer this is low-key, the better. You know anyone at the circuit court? You remember Chris? Day student the year after us. He was having trouble picking up a law firm job, so he's clerking at the circuit court now, trying to fluff up his resume. He might be able to expedite things, but if a judge wants to get live testimony, this might all collapse under its own weight. Sarah is going to have to decide not to want to fight it for some fraud on the court reason when she figures out what's going on. If this goes bad at that point, I am probably going to have to withdraw as your attorney." "Fair enough. Someday you can tell me the full story, but I don't want to hear it now." For the next 3 weeks, John managed to keep Sarah at arm's length. He sent her text messages at odd hours, telling her how busy he was but otherwise did not answer her calls. As the days passed, she called less frequently. "You scared the hell out of her," Ethan told him at the end of the week. "According to our video feed, Alex hasn't been over to the house once since you showed up and surprised them on Tuesday morning. Can't tell if they're meeting at his place during the week or screwing each other in the office, but they aren't doing it in the house. They'll tell you if something changes." The only thing that changed was that John had quietly gone back to the house when he knew that Sarah was gone and gotten financial papers that he thought he might need. He had also signed a home sale contract with Tom Wilkes. The sale would close the first week that Sarah was in Spain. Otherwise, John went to the gym, did some leisure reading, and wondered how he had gotten to the point of turning 36 with such a mess of a life. He told James that he needed another several weeks off, which James reluctantly granted. "She's screwing him in the house again," Ethan said on Sunday, a week before Sarah was due to go to Paris. "Thanks for the heads up," John replied. He did not really care but knew that he was going to burn the sheets rather than sell them when he dumped the house. By now, John had looked at the video Ethan had given him the first time. He could see the attraction. Alex was a couple of years younger, and Frank's investigation revealed the guy was a gym rat, always flexing in front of the mirror after he did his weight workouts. Other than that, he was unremarkable by comparison. John was in decent shape but certainly did not have a washboard stomach. Apparently, Sarah was looking for arm candy. That kind of superficiality John could do without. Before John knew it, Sarah had departed on her long-anticipated Paris trip. One of Frank's people tailed her to the airport and waited until the plane was wheels up en route to Europe. On getting the word, John went to the house, piled all of Emma's clothes in a pile in the living room, and packed everything that he wanted to keep. The movers came the next day, boxed up Emma's clothes, and sent them to a storage facility. They separately packed Ben's things and moved them to an apartment he had found. Thanks to Tom Wilkes, the handy house flipper, John was able to sell the furniture easily. When the house was finally empty, John took one last walk around before doing his last task. He had carefully assembled the wedding photos and album, as well as Emma's bridal gown. He took them down to the fire pit on the patio that was just under the treehouse, carefully put the photos and album in the pit on top of the charcoal, added the gown and some lighter fluid, and lit the match. After it all burned, John was pleased to see that the video really provided a lot of detail. You could even see the detail on each photo as it was added to the pit. One day later, John closed on the sale of his marital home, using a power of attorney from his wife to sign as her attorney-in-fact. She really should have read everything she had signed. Thanks to the separate financial power of attorney, John was able to deposit the home sale profit check in his personal account after endorsing it on behalf of his wife as her attorney-in-fact and closed the joint accounts. 3 days after that, still in the first week of Emma's trip to Spain, the construction crew had leveled the house. They cleared the debris in a few days. The site preparation work began after that. Unfortunately, the tree with the treehouse that was perfect for children had to go. The new plat had a gazebo going there. Unfortunately, at that point, when the entire site of what had once been John and Emma's happy home was just a big square of dirt, construction stopped. Seems that something had gone wrong with the permitting process. John and his law school friend, who worked in the county permitting office, were certain that the problem would resolve itself a couple of days after Sarah got home from Spain, just as soon as the proper forms were received and approved. In all this time, John did not take any calls from Sarah. He stopped sending her text messages, did not respond to emails, and did not respond to voicemails. Some of her friends and family called. John sent curt messages in reply that he was busy and traveling, mostly to keep them from trying to drive by the house and see him. The Phantom called him on the burner phone and told him that Sarah and Alex seemed to be under stress and were not looking so good. Maybe she suspected something was wrong. John asked how he knew that. The Phantom just said that he had friends and family all over the place, even in Europe. He did ask John if he was interested in recovering Emma's engagement and wedding rings. When John said no, the Phantom asked if he minded if someone else acquired them. No, good. I might know someone who would like them. On a Thursday, 2 days before Sarah was due back from Paris, John was in Harry's office. I don't know how the heck it happened, but here is the divorce decree. It's way faster than normal for this kind of case. And Chris wouldn't tell me anything. I don't want to know, and am not asking. Count your lucky stars, and congratulations on being single again. Here's a copy I'm going to send to your ex-wife. I'm sure she'll be thrilled. As John got to his car outside Harry's office, his phone rang. He did not recognize the number, but when he answered, he recognized El Diablo's voice. John, you should take a vacation right now. Go to the kind of place where there are lots of people who know you and can say you were there. The Phantom hung up. John realized that it had been a while since he saw some college friends who lived in Los Angeles. Fortunately, their schedules were light over the next few days, so he went up by Amtrak that same day. Went to some shows, some museums, and went with various combinations of friends to lunches, coffees, and dinners, much of which he paid for by credit card. He also tipped generously at his hotel so that all the staff knew who he was. While there, he express-mailed a copy of the DVD showing him burning her wedding dress and wedding album to the house of Emma's parents. Late on Sunday afternoon, after enjoying a coffee and cake in Chinatown in Manhattan, Ben's phone rang. It was his father-in-law. John, where are you? Emma's going crazy. She's in the hospital. Yeah, what's wrong with her? This was getting interesting. She got back from her trip on Sunday, but she and a coworker apparently got kidnapped from the airport. They were both drugged and only got out this morning. The coworker was beaten nearly to death, and Sarah here, her father's voice faltered. Once upon a time, John would have been sympathetic. What happened to Sarah? She woke up to find herself covered head to toe with tattoos, Tattoos saying horrible things like that she is a cheater and a liar. As soon as she woke up to see that, some guy with a mask came in and punched her in the nose, breaking it, and then gave her 2 black eyes. Impressive, John thought. Really, it was a cherry on top of the sundae. He would have been happy with Emma's realization that he had cheated her in court just like she had cheated him in the marriage. But this just was a rainbow unicorn of joy. It would have been worth an immortal soul if he had one to give. Sorry to hear that. I'm out of town at the moment. What would you like me to do? John could tell there was surprise on the other end of the line. You're her husband. She's your wife. So sorry, no. We got divorced. The order was issued last week. She's been cheating on me with the guy she's traveling with. What? What part wasn't clear? John knew that he was being needlessly cruel now but did not care. I've got video. I can send you a copy if you want. There was silence on the other end of the call. John wondered if his father-in-law was having a heart attack. She and I are done, so you'll have to take her home. She's not my problem now. You did this, his father-in-law screamed. Me? I've been up in New York since Thursday celebrating the divorce. Look, I know you're upset, and I hope Sarah gets better soon, but I don't think we have anything more to say to each other. He hung up the phone. It occurred to John at that moment that the stress of city life was too intense lately. He sent an email to James saying that, after all, James and the firm could go screw themselves, respectfully. A quick internet search revealed that there was an REI store in Soho, so John outfitted himself with brand new hiking and camping gear. Sarah had never liked to go camping, so this was a chance to reconnect with his scouting past. The hotel was very accommodating about storing his luggage for a while, for a modest fee, and before he knew it, he was on his way up to the Rocky Mountains to bond with nature until things calmed down. Fortunately, he had his passport in case he had time for a side trip to Canada, and it turns out he did. For most of the next 8 weeks, he had turned his phone off. At first, it seemed that some crazy woman had stolen his ex-wife's phone because there were dozens, if not hundreds. She wasn't counting off messages that seemed to involve unhinged screaming and crying. He had only listened to 1 or 2 before deleting the rest. Lots of bonkers emails too. Her account must have been hacked. How was he supposed to find time to read all that? He hoped that whoever the crazy woman was, that she got the help she so desperately needed. So it was that 8 weeks later, John met Ethan for a drink. David was there too. Just so we're clear, David said as they sat down, I terminated our attorney-client relationship just after I gave you the divorce decree. I notified you by certified letter. You might not have checked your mail yet. Not yet, John admitted. Serious storm, my friend, David said. Ethan, what would you say? More like a typhoon, Ethan said. I like that. Typhoon. Anyway, lots of destruction. David downed his bourbon and asked for another immediately. You start, Ethan. So, Tuesday morning, the former Mrs. Jeffers goes by the old homestead with her parents. We had not gotten around to taking the external camera down. When she sees the vacant lot, she has a complete meltdown. Drops down on her knees, sobbing, winds up kicking and screaming like a toddler in a shopping mall in the late afternoon. Then the work crew pulls up with the equipment, and she loses it again. She loses it for a 3rd time when the construction workers see what's tattooed all over her face and start laughing. Got to say, the work is so good. The text shows up very nicely on camera. Cheater and liar and that kind of thing. Face, neck, hands. And that's while she's got the raccoon eyes from getting punched, plus the tape for the broken nose. David picked up the story. That afternoon, she and a couple of big firm lawyers show up at my humble office, coming on strong. They didn't have an appointment, so I made them wait for 15 minutes, made sure my Glock was loaded and accessible in my desk. Thank God we're in Massachusetts, you know. 15 minutes later, they are all yelling at me, talking about emergency motions and bar complaints and contempt proceedings. I have to admit that I had trouble not looking at the ink all over the face. It was done very clearly in red and blue ink so it can be seen at a distance. When I was able to refocus, I asked what exactly the problem is. What statement in any of the pleadings was false? They all stopped and looked at each other. So I asked whether there was a dispute that your ex had committed adultery. They all said yes. So I turned on the video, which I had queued up while they were waiting, and good old Sarah is clearly making love in the marital bed. They apparently had not reviewed everything in the case file yet. Everyone just looked embarrassed. Then Sarah starts yelling that you didn't even give her a chance to explain, and I said you didn't care what the reason was, just that she did it. She recovers and starts going on about how she never agreed to let you sell the house and what was the story with you burning her wedding gown. photos, and album. That stuff was all her personal property. I showed her the copies of the powers of attorney, one of which was for the specific purpose of the sale of the home. I showed her the property settlement agreement, which gave you the right at your sole discretion to dispose of her personal effects, and told her she was lucky she had her clothes. I asked if she was denying it was her signature on the documents. She said no, but that she had never agreed to any of what they said. So then I asked if her whole defense was that she had never read the stuff that she signed. I asked her to imagine how the cross-examination would go if she challenged anything in court. She stopped talking. Then I also pointed out in the affidavit she signed where she admitted that her lover was upstairs at that very moment she signed and had been there all night. I asked if it was untrue. That was when she passed out. The attorneys tried reviving her, but I just called 911. She refused to go to the hospital with them, but then she started screaming about the tattoos and about her boyfriend getting beaten up. And I said that had nothing to do with you as far as I knew, and you were out of town anyway. And maybe Alex had pissed off some other wife's husband by screwing her, or some other woman who thought Sarah was taking Alex away from her. I told them they knew where the Lexington Police Department was if they had a criminal case they wanted to discuss. Sorry, I missed all that. It gets better, said David. So, they were still going on talking about filing a motion for reconsideration and all that kind of stuff. That's when I told them that just that morning I had received an anonymous email with links to several videos of Sarah and Alex in your bed when they started going at it again before Spain. The message said that the videos were going to go to everyone Sarah knew and that you, John, knew nothing about it and would not be able to stop them from doing this, and that they were friends you had helped once and that they would protect you and that they would hit the send button that very day if she didn't just let things go. You know anything about that? I've been out of town, David. They took off after that. Haven't heard from them since, and nothing has happened in the courthouse. It was Frank's turn again. They must have gone to the cops because a couple of detectives came around. They wanted copies of the videos and the report. Then they lost interest. Neither Sarah nor Alex could say what happened, just that they got into a taxi at the airport, and the next thing the guy knew, he was in the hospital with Sarah. She woke up in a sleazy hotel, got punched in the face, and then went to the hospital. The room was billed to her credit card too, plus room service and the minibar. This time, John told them that the hotel manager said that New York cops had checked up on his stay at the hotel and that his New York friends had been contacted too, but they had all vouched for his very active schedule in the city. Word is, David said, that your ex is hiding in her parents' basement while she undergoes laser tattoo removal treatment. Problem is that they charge by the square inch and she is covered from head to toe. That's got to cost several $1,000s. That's a shame, John said. David glared at John. Ethan just kept his lips pursed to avoid laughing. And what happened to Alex? I understand he got pretty messed up, David said. Lots of physical therapy in his future. Head's a bit damaged. Multiple concussions. Probably will have some difficulty getting another paralegal job. Their firm let both of them go too. Seems their relationship fell apart during the trip, and somehow that adversely affected the entire arbitration. Stuff was missed. Exhibits were not ready, witness outlines had problems. They lost on the merits. The client was not happy. The firm had to offer human sacrifices to keep the client for future work. Someday, John, you'll have to tell us how you managed this, Ethan said. Managed what? I'm a Boy Scout. Lila was waiting in the car when he left. I'm a bit jealous. No one asked me whether I actually notarized the documents or whether she read them before signing. I was ready to say that I observed her examine each one before signing, but that I could not estimate how much time she spent doing it. We should discuss this at dinner. I need to treat you and the boyfriend to thank you for your help and getting me my freedom. Lila turned to him and looked over her sunglasses as John backed the car out of the parking lot. There is no boyfriend, you idiot. John braked hard and looked at her. Really? Now shut up and take me home so you can begin a rather long and grueling process of apologizing to me. Okay. John smiled. But I have to stop at the post office first. Why? I'm sending a postcard to a friend, John said as he pulled it out of the glove compartment. It had the Boy Scout logo on the front. I'm asking her if she feels safe now. And that's the dramatic tale of betrayal and calculated revenge. What do you think, was John's approach justified? Or did he cross the line? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more intriguing stories like this one.